Coming up on Arirang News, President Moon Jae-in pledges that the next round of coronavirus relief payments will be as broad and deep as possible. Those payments will likely happen next month. The Finance Ministry's monthly report shows South Korea's exports improving, but with the damage sustained by the service sector, employment continues to fall. And South Korea reports a decline in new cases of COVID-19, but there are growing cluster infections at factories numbering hundreds of people, many of them foreign workers in the country illegally. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. President Moon Jae-in and the ruling Democratic Party have proposed what they say would be consolatory cash payments to people in South Korea when the pandemic ends to boost consumer spending. But first, they're going to work on distributing the next round of relief payments in March. Hong Yu reports.
President Moon Jae-in could consider special consolatory cash handouts to public once the COVID-19 pandemic has come to an end to boost people's morale. The idea came up during his meeting with representatives of the ruling Democratic Party at the Blue House on Friday.
When party leader Lee Na-kyun and floor leader Kim Tae-hyun mentioned payments to boost the economy and cheer up the people, President Moon emphasized that such payments should be aimed at boosting both public morale and consumer spending.
The party leader Lee Na-kyun had raised the need for support to foster public consumption once COVID-19 is under control. He added that the party will also try to speed up the fourth round of emergency handouts.
We will hurry in planning with the government for an extra budget needed to support people during the COVID-19 crisis. We will speed up the distributing of emergency handouts in March.
President Moon emphasized that the fourth round of emergency handouts should be as broad and thick as possible, as the damage from COVID-19 has become wider and deeper.
처음부터 당과 생각이 똑같을 수는 없겠지만 사각지대가 최소화되는 피해 지원책이 될 수 있도록 정부에서도 적극적으로 임하겠습니다. 또 당에서도 한편으로는 이 재정의 여건을 감안해 주시기를 바랍니다.
The social distancing measures implemented by the government to contain the spread of the virus have hit small business owners hard. The Federation of Coffee Shop and Restaurant Owners on Friday announced that they are filing a lawsuit against the government for a total of 1.2 billion won, which is more than $1 million. They claim the government has only forced sacrifices on them over the past 3 months without conducting any field research beforehand. They said emergency handouts that are given out like candies to soothe crying babies only enrage them rather than giving them hope. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
South Korea saw a slight decline today in new cases of COVID-19, fewer than 600, but some large cluster infections at factories continue to grow. The Prime Minister is urging everyone to do what they can voluntarily to stop the spread, and he expressed thanks to those businesses that have been doing so. Han Sung-woo reports.
South Korea reported 561 new COVID-19 cases on Friday, following 2 days of more than 600 daily cases. 533 of Friday's cases were transmitted locally, and close to 400 of them came from Seoul and the surrounding area. Cluster infections at hospitals in the capital area and family gatherings across the country during the Lunar New Year holidays added to the total tally. Meanwhile, the recent outbreaks at a gas boiler factory in Asan, Chungcheongnam-do province and a plastics factory in Namyangju, Gyeonggi-do province now account for a total of at least 272 cases. In a briefing on Friday, Prime Minister Chung Se-kyun voiced concern at the conditions in which foreign laborers in the country are working and whether prevention measures are being kept.
Most of the foreign workers working at the factory where the cluster infection broke out were staying illegally. It pains the government that the related authorities weren't even aware of this situation.
On a different note, Chung thanked business owners for carrying out prevention measures despite the recent easing of social distancing guidelines.
Voluntary prevention efforts are gradually spreading by region and industry. Merchants at Namdaemun and Dongdaemun are disinfecting and checking temperatures, while online gym communities have installed social distancing reporting centers.
The nation's total number of COVID-19 cases now stands at more than 86,000. 6 more people have died, raising the death toll to 1,550. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
In other news, Seoul's top nuclear envoy, No Kyu-duk, held a virtual meeting this morning with diplomats from Washington and Tokyo to discuss the issue of North Korea's denuclearization. No spoke with the U.S. State Department's acting Assistant Secretary for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, Sung Kim, and the Japanese Foreign Ministry's Director General for Asian and Oceanian Affairs, Takehiro Funakoshi. They agreed to work together for complete denuclearization and lasting peace on the Korean Peninsula. In Myanmar, a young woman who was shot by police last week as she took part in protests against the military coup there has been pronounced dead, according to reports. This is the first confirmed death among the protesters. The 19-year-old, named Mya Tue Tue Kain, was shot in the head in Myanmar's capital, Naypyidaw, and since then had been brain dead with no signs of recovery. Protesters have been hailing her as a hero. The military has not denied the incident, but said that she had been throwing rocks at the police. Reports, however, say there are no independent accounts of her partaking in any form of violence. South Korea's finance ministry has noted an improvement in the country's exports led by memory chips. That's helping manufacturing and investment. But the job situation continues to deteriorate, as does consumer spending. This is in the finance ministry's latest Green Book. Kim Jae-hee has the details.
The South Korean economy is seeing a rebound in exports, but the pandemic continues to hammer the service sector and job market. The Ministry of Economy and Finance on Friday expressed concerns about the uncertainties surrounding the economy.
The South Korean economy has recently seen some improvement in the investment and manufacturing sectors, thanks to rising exports. But the real economy faces persistent uncertainty, with weakening domestic demand in the service sector and a slump in the job market, worsened by the recent third wave and tougher virus curbs.
According to the ministry's monthly economic assessment report called the Green Book on Friday, exports in January rose 11.4% from a year earlier, thanks to robust demand for chips and an increased number of working days. But domestic card spending was down for the second month in a row, following a 3.9% on-year drop in December 2020. The job market also remained gloomy. The number of employed people fell 982,000 in January from a year earlier, marking the steepest decline since December 1998. Service industry output in December was also down 1.1% from a month earlier. Regarding external factors, the ministry showed a degree of optimism, saying it anticipated an economic recovery in major economies thanks to global vaccine rollouts.
Externally, economic indicators have weakened somewhat due to a resurgence of infections since the fourth quarter of last year. But expectations are rising with the recent slowdown in global infections, vaccine rollouts, and massive stimulus measures.
With hopes stemming from external factors, the ministry stressed it will continue to come up with additional measures to support those hit hardest by the pandemic and find innovative ways to stabilize the job market. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
South Korea's producer prices rose in January for the third month in a row on higher prices of agricultural and fishery products. The Bank of Korea says its producer price index came to 104.9 last month, up 0.9% on month. The prices of agricultural and fishery goods were up 8% because of the cold weather. This is the biggest jump in more than 2 years, and the trend is expected to continue through February. The prices of industrial goods went up 1%, led by rising oil prices. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon. And for that, I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, Global Strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, thank you for making time today.
Good afternoon.
Well, all three main indices on Wall Street saw a moderate decline overnight. Concerns out there about rising Treasury yields, but also data showing that more jobs were lost in the U.S. than expected. What's the story in the global markets?
Yes, including U.S. market, most of the global markets are showing some correction. Particularly for U.S., yesterday was down by about 0.4% for Dow. S&P was also down by 0.4%. And the NASDAQ was down a lot more by 0.7%. Also, Russell 2000, the small mid-cap, were down more than 1.5%. The main reason for that is because on the macro side, first-time filing for jobless insurance totaled 861,000 last week. It was well above consensus of 773,000. And also, if you look at the corporate front, the Walmart shares were plunged by 6% because of the poor fourth quarter earnings, and continuously showing that the overall sales growth is not positively happening here. So a lot of people were saying that economic recovery was expected, but the level of the recovery is not coming in as aggressively as people hoped for. Also, if you look at the overall dollar index, it seems to be quite sidelining. And people are expecting some additional stimulus headlines in regards to the monetary and fiscal policies. But in terms of the economic growth rate, you are expecting some positive recovery. But in terms of the speed and the strength of it, people are questioning. So all in all, everybody's just looking at the market as a bit of a taking a breather. We think this kind of trend could continue for the next couple of months because you're not going to see any earnings numbers coming in for the next few months. And therefore, people were just watching for what's happening to the interest rate or inflation or retail sales number.
And another dramatic session today in the Korean market. The Kospi and the Kosdaq sharply down at midday. The Kospi recovering all of that and more for a nice gain, but the Kosdaq still lower. Tell us about the local markets.
Right. The Kospi actually correction was much more significant than U.S. market. If you look at the overall Kospi trend, it hit well above 3,200 territories about a month ago and has declined to almost down to 3,000 level, but has recovered quite nicely and actually has risen by about 0.68%. In terms of the Kosdaq, still down by 0.24%, but nevertheless, it did recover from its bottom. In terms of the concern is because of the inflationary pressure as well as the COVID-19 cases. Used to see South Korea's showing another 600 plus level of new cases happening. It did go down to below 400, but has come up higher because of continuation of the new virus trend. So people are concerned about what's happening to the overall retail sales number, as well as the uncertainties in the global market. That is all affecting the market to be corrected. But if you look at the overall earnings growth number, particularly on the semiconductor industries, people are quite excited about the SK Hynix and various other semiconductor businesses where it is expected to show well above 140% earnings growth rate this year. And you are seeing that happening global cases. The DRAM demand is rising quite rapidly with a lot of events happening on the global cases.
And producer prices up in January for a third month in a row, up by the most in 4 years. This affects consumer prices down the road, of course. So what's happening with prices and any areas that stand out to you?
Right. If you look at the South Korea's producers' prices, it rose by 0.9% on month of January, supported by a modest rise in prices of farm goods, energy, and that seems to be a continued trend in the last several months. As you said earlier, the number is up to 104.88 compared to 103.9 a month earlier. If you look at the level of the strongest growth, it comes from the livestock, which rose by 11.8% year on year. And also fishery goods were up about 1.2%. And in terms of the inflation pressure, however, it was subdued because of continued low oil prices. But looking into the oil prices you've seen this month, we think that the inflation pressure will be a little bit higher for the month of February. Consumer price also climbed by about 0.6%, but it is well below BOK's 2% inflation target. Therefore, we don't expect any kind of movement by BOK, particularly given the fact that the Fed of U.S. have said that they will not touch interest rate or the current level of monetary policy. If that's the case, then the BOK will continue to keep the loosened monetary policy in the future.
Got it. All right, Mr. Yu, thanks so much for sharing your insights with us today. We'll have to leave it there. Have a great weekend.
You too. Thank you very much.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.